Shalom. First and foremost, call halal yamla, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem HaRachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned the truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And in this video, I'm going to be going into another article, as you see here on the screen. And this is from the People's Voice.tv. And you pretty much already see the title of the article, Micro C hips patented by Gil Bates, discovered in massive range of everyday foods. And this article is from August 12th, 2025. All right. And as it goes into, it says, first they laughed, then they denied, and all the while it was happening right under our noses, hidden in plain sight, inside the foods we trust most. A quiet operation, years in the making, and now the name behind it has been exposed. Gil Bates caught planting micro C-hips in your everyday food supply. You know, and and as it continues to go into, it says a paper trail of patents, research funding, and international contracts, all pointing straight back to him. This is decades of planning quietly rolling out while no one was watching. And here's the kicker: we now know they've already been in our foods for the last 3 years. You know, and if you've been paying attention over these past few years, especially ever since 2020 up until now, you've had guys by the likes of Gil Bates talking about putting the jab, the contents of the jab inside of the food, inside of the salads, the fruit. Okay, pretty much trying to get it, get everybody juiced in. All right, no pun intended. Get everybody juiced in to ultimately all this technology that Esau's trying to set up in these outer days, AI, all right, data centers, and ultimately, the micro C-hip. Okay, but over these past few years, you've been seeing guys by the likes of Gil Bates, talking about tampering with the food and putting the contents of the jab inside of the food. Okay, and as well, buying up all the farmland all across the United States and creating lab-grown meat. All right, and as this article is going into, we're reading about the things that he's been doing over these past few years, as he has been slowly but surely trying to gain control over the food supply and lab-grown meats and putting things in the food to to pretty much mess with the insides of your body. Okay, and this is all just furthermore wicked evil plans of Esau Edom, starting with his his upper echelon, which this guy Gil Bates. Okay, he's put at the forefront of one of the richest men in the world and things like that, which we know ultimately the true top rich peoples amongst Esau Edom is ultimately the top banking families. But guys like Gil Bates, all right, Elon Musk, so on and so forth, they're just used as the faces of what the elite banking families of Esau Edom want done on the earth. Okay, and as we see in this case, in this article, this guy Gil Bates, he's been at the forefront over these past few years of sticking mini nano micro C-hips inside of the food supply. Okay, in the food, a lot of the foods that we eat. Okay, and these things have been going unchecked, unnoticed. All right, just literally as it went into happening right under our noses. Okay, and then it continues to go into let's see. It says a little further down in this article, it says after that brief flirtation with honesty, Clinton learned his lesson and never spoke of the experiments again. Meanwhile, the elite's agenda to medically subjugate the masses shifted into overdrive, and Gil Bates activated long-standing U.S. patents to roll out his microCIP army without public consent. Okay? And then it says, protecting against counterfeit products is the cover story. But we know better because they're not just showing up in Parmesan cheese, they're in Coca-Cola, they're in Pepsi, okay? Foods and, drinks that's highly advertised and highly promoted, here in Babylon the Great America, especially, because you gotta understand a lot of the foods and the drinks and the things that's advertised, on TV and whatnot, things that are heavily advertised to the average American consumer. Okay, these food products, these drink products, a lot of these things that's highly advertised to the average American on TV and whatnot. You best believe Esau has some shit in it. Okay, some things in it that shouldn't belong in food, shouldn't belong in drinks, and most certainly shouldn't belong in the human body. Period. Okay, Coca-Cola and Pepsi are just two major drink items that's been advertised, throughout America, Babylon the Great, for years, for decades. Okay, various Coca-Cola commercials, Pepsi commercials, things like that. You know, fast food and these different food items, different snacks and candy and whatnot that's highly advertised on the TV. All right, you best believe all these things. If Esau is advertising it to you and putting it before you, you best believe it's tainted and corrupted in some way, shape, or form, and it should not belong in a human body. And as we're going into a lot of these food items that are heavily coveted throughout America. Okay, this guy Gil Bates, as this article is going into, has been sticking many micro CHIPs inside of a lot of these food items. Okay, and then it says uh, they're in Coca-Cola, they're in Pepsi, and it all traces back to a deal Gil Bates's Microsoft struck with them last year. When you deal with that term Microsoft, micro means small, and then soft, speaks to software. Okay, Microsoft, small software. Showing you that this whole time, Esau's been telling you, what his ultimate agenda is. Okay, to stick a small piece of software into people via the MOTB, the micro CHIP, for people to be able to buy and sell and have access to, basically have access to life, basically, under Esau's NWO system, to stick that small software, that micro CHIP, inside of people, okay, to allow people to continue living, in Esau's NWO agenda. In this company Microsoft, which formerly owned by Gil Bates, has pretty much been telling us this whole time what Esau's agenda was all about. All right, literally in our faces, okay, in plain sight, and but as we see, a lot of these foods that's been heavily coveted, over these past few years, this guy Gil Bates has been, sticking micro CHIPs inside of a lot of these foods. All right, you best believe he's putting a lot of these things inside of you. A lot of these salads and fruits that people eat. Okay, you wonder why when you go to the store and buy oranges, an orange today doesn't taste the same as an orange, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It doesn't have that same strong scent, that same strong taste. All right, that same strong smell. All right, because of all these things, a lot of these foods are all tainted. Okay, and as we see, is tainted by the likes of guys like Gil Bates and these, and these other entities set up by Esau Edom. And then it goes into let's see, then it goes into basically how these microchips work that's inside of a lot of these foods. But then it says right here, but it gets worse. Gates funded scientists have developed a surface electrochemical actuator that turns these microchips into microscopic robots complete with legs. The Gates funded scientists behind these microchips claim they're serving the public good. Yeah, claiming that these things are all about people's health and for their own good and peace and safety and all these things. And then it continues to say, but if that's the case, why hide it? Why keep the public in dark? No disclosure, no consent, just quiet deployment. That's not science for humanity. That's control. You see that? Then it says the truth is these microchips are being used for nefarious purposes, control, surveillance, and agendas we never agreed to. You see, and that's all what is, and that's ultimately what it's all about with Esau Edom. Okay, constantly trying to find ways to get inside your body via the foods that you eat, the air that you breathe, the water that you drink. All right, and even you also have this thing called smart dust as well, which let's look that up. All right, smart dust. And it says right here. It says right here, smart dust, also known as micro electromechanical systems, is a network of tiny sensors that can monitor and collect data from their environment. Okay, it says the sensors are about the size of a grain of sand and can detect things like temperature, light, sound, movement, chemicals, and air pressure. And then it says they can also be used for tracking purposes. Okay, tracking what? Not just tracking temperature, light, sound, and movement, and all these things, but ultimately as well to track, further tracking humans. Okay. And then let's see. I'll click this right here. It says, what does smart dust do to your body? It says implanting smart dust devices can monitor vital signs, detect pathogens, and track medication adherence. It says these applications enable remote patient monitoring and personalized health care interventions. Okay, but basically, this smart dust, which Esau already has that in the air right now. Okay, all throughout the air. People breathe this stuff in. We breathe this stuff in on a daily. Okay, Esau puts these things in the air. All right, to ultimately, just further find ways to get inside people's bodies for the purpose of tracking what's going on inside of people's bodies, tracking what's going on inside of people's heads. Okay, inside of their nervous system, inside of their respiratory system, their blood system. Okay. Just getting inside of people's body ultimately to know how people's bodies works, to ultimately figure out ways to further destroy the human body. Okay, and again, as Esau has these things out in the air, we breathe this stuff in constantly on a daily. All right, and as well, on top of that, you got stuff like this going on as well. Okay, Gil Bates putting many microchips inside of the foods that we eat. Okay, so this is all just further madness of Esau Edom. as he's been given, as he's in his blessing. All right, the fatness of the earth via the sword. Okay, warfare, violence. All right, just destroying any and everything, destroying humanity. Okay, this is all part of Esau Edom doing the bidding of Satan. All right, and in this case, as we're going into, using his technology, his pseudoscience and his technology to destroy the foods that we eat. Okay, and of course, you already know we got to get Ezekiel 4 verse 13. It says, "And the Lord Yahweh said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them." See that? And stuff like, of course, we know things like GMOs and Monsanto's are a major part of the defiled bread that we eat on a daily basis. Okay, along with Esau tampering with a lot of the meats. Okay, tampering and mistreating a lot of these animals that get slaughtered. That we eat. That we buy out of the store and eat and whatnot. Beef, chicken, lamb. The way that Esau raises up these animals and mistreats them, okay, it leads to the meat being tainted, all right, corrupted, destroyed. You see? And you take that, the way Esau treats the animals and he treats the meat, and you link this, what we're going into in this article with that. Okay, it just further shows that, hey, we're eating the defiled bread, meaning what? The defiled food of the heathen nations. Okay, the defiled food of Esau, Edom, in these heathen nations. You see that? And that's why, even as it says, let's get this is Sirach 39. Sirach 39 in verse 26. It says, "The principal things for the whole use of man's life are water, fire, iron, and salt, flour of wheat, honey, milk, and the blood of the grape, and oil and clothing." And then it says, verse 27, "All these things are for good to the godly, so to the sinners they are turned into evil." And Esau Edom is the man of sin, pursuant to 2 Thessalonians. And so Esau Edom has turned all these things that are for the whole use of man's life into evil. Esau has basically turned everything that we need to live and survive on the earth into a sword, an instrument of death. Okay, even in this case, food. He's turned food into a sword, an instrument of death. Linking technology with food, all for the purpose of tracking and tracing what's going on inside of people's bodies. How the body process and digest food, what the body is able to digest, what the body is not able to digest, all for the purpose of just destroying humanity, just offing people, all right, and doing wickedness. Okay, you wonder why nowadays you eat certain foods, certain foods that you were used to eating throughout your life. And then now, as of nowadays, when you eat those same foods, they don't have the same effect that they may have once had, when you ate them growing up. Or, you eat them nowadays and they just completely mess up your body. All right. It makes you, they make you sick. They make you tired. They drain your energy. Okay. They mess up your cognitive functioning. It messes up your memory. It kind of throws you off a little bit. And that's all because of how Esau is messing with the food and messing with the air and messing with the things that we need to put inside of our bodies just to simply live on earth. Okay, Esau has turned everything into a sword. He's weaponized the food, weaponized the air, the water. Okay, he's weaponized life itself as a whole. You see that? And as a matter of fact, even in Daniel 7, where it talks about how Esau will wear out the saints. This is Daniel 7 and verse 25. This is speaking about the little horn that will come out of the fourth beast, the ancient Roman Empire. All right, the little horn that would eventually come into power to revive the ancient Roman Empire, which that little horn is America. Okay, the United States of America, Babylon the Great. Because America is the revival of the ancient Western Roman Empire. Okay, and it says, Daniel 7 verse 25, it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, using pseudoscience, technology, AI, false religion, Christianity, the picture of Cesare Borgia, Esau's false education system, his false politics, his false money system. These are all examples of how Esau, through America, along with NATO and the EU, speak great words against Yahweh Shemashai, blaspheming his name, his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven, as it speaks of in Revelation, the 13th chapter. It says, Daniel 7 verse 25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. And who are the saints? The Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, pursuant to Psalms 148 verse 14. Where it clearly tells you the saints, right, of the Bible are Israelites, which are so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. So, the revival of this fourth beast system, the little horn that will come out of the fourth beast system, which is America, all right, one of the things that it would do in these outer days, as it went into, is speak great words against Yahweh Shemashai, and as I just said, wear out the saints of the Most High, wear our people out, okay? And then it says, and think to change times and laws, daylight savings, okay? Just completely going against the laws and the commandments of Yahweh Shemashai, giving alphabets rights, okay? Feminism, just to name a couple. All right, and then it says, and they shall be given into his hand until the time and times and the dividing of time. Okay, and that's all right. Daniel 7:25 in NLT, it says, he will defy the Most High and oppress the holy people of the Most High. He will try to change their sacred festivals and laws, and they will be placed under his control for a time, times, and half a time. All right. Then let's read in the AMP Bible, the AMP Bible. It says he will speak words against the Most High, and wear down the saints of the Most High. All right. Esau's wearing this down. It says, and he will intend to change the times and the law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, 2 times, and half a time, 3½ years. Which speaks to, all right, the 350-year period, from 1619, when Judah, Benjamin, and Levi were brought to the shores of America, via slavery, okay, up until the late 1960s. Early 1970s, from 1619 up until the late 1960s, is a period of 350 years, which is the time and a half a time that is speaking of here in Daniel 7:25. Okay, where during that 350-year period, we will be completely dominated by Esau, Edom, via slavery and genocide and Roman Catholicism and Christianity. Okay, Willie Lynch, Jim Crow, so on and so forth, and as it went into in the KJV, all right, America, the little horn of the fourth beast system, would wear out the saints, would wear out us Israelites. All right, and let's go into this term "wear out" in the blue letter. It says, shall wear out, and it's Strong's H1080. It says Bala, and it says to wear away. wear out, to harass constantly. Okay, then it goes into to afflict, wear out. Okay, and one of the major ways that Esau has worn us out, us Israelites. In this case, as we're going into the foods, messing with the food, and now nowadays, linking food with this pseudoscience and this technology. Sticking many microchips inside of the foods that we eat. Okay, weaponizing the food. Again, that's why you eat certain foods nowadays that you may have been used to eating over the years, and nowadays when you eat them, it makes you all tired. It messes you up, makes you sick. Okay, it drains your energy. It messes with your memory and your brain function, your body function. Okay, it just completely throws you off. Okay, you're not supposed to put technology and all this madness inside of the food, all right? Because first and foremost, food, the Lord created food to naturally come out of the earth. All right, let's get that real quick. I believe that's in Job 28, if I'm not mistaken. So like Job 28. Yeah, Job 28 and verse 5, it says, "As for the earth, out of it cometh bread, and under it is turned up as it were fire." All right, NLT, it says, "Food is grown on the earth above, but down below the earth is melted as by fire." Yeah, so the Lord created food to just naturally come out of the earth. Okay, plants, vegetables, herbs, and even the animals. Animals eat out of the earth. Okay, herbivore animals such as deer and cows. Okay, turkey, chicken. They eat things that come naturally out of the earth. Whether it be plants, seeds, whatnot. Okay, but Esau is pretty much tainted. The animals and the meats that we eat so much. There's information that you can look up where it's where when you go into it, Esau basically feeds a lot of these animals, these clean animals that we eat. He feeds them candy. Okay, even feeding, there's even information you can look up as well, where Esau, he has these chicken farms where he raises up chickens, and he'll basically feed them other chickens. Okay, just completely defiling and tampering with the food that we eat. Turning the food that we eat into a sword, corrupting it. Okay, whereas food is supposed to just naturally come from things out of the earth. Healthy, organic, as the Lord intended it to be. But because Esau is, messed with the food so much, it's wearing us down as Israelites. Okay, especially us Israelites, as Esau is, constantly studying Jake, studying the way our body works. Okay, always trying to figure out ways to make our bodies more sicker. Okay, more destroyed, more through. And even as we went into in that article, now Esau's merging his technology with the foods that we eat to further destroy our bodies and ultimately off us in mass numbers. Okay, and you see, and stuff like this is why ultimately these bodies that we're in right now cannot make it into the kingdom of heaven. As it says in 1 Corinthians. Yeah, 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, in the 50th verse. It says, "Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Yahweh, neither doth corruption inherit incorruption." Let's read that in NLT. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 50 in the NLT. It says, "What I am saying, dear brothers and sisters, is that our physical bodies cannot inherit the kingdom of Yahweh. Okay? These dying bodies cannot inherit what will last forever. Yeah, and that's what's going on with these bodies that we're in. Okay, which, these carnal fleshly bodies were always subject to death, anyways. But, especially now more than ever. As okay, the average lifespan is decreasing more and more nowadays. Okay, as Esau Edom is increasing more and more in science and technology, okay, and whatnot, the more and more life decreases. As Esau is increasing more and more with the pseudoscience and the technology, life is decreasing more and more. Family is decreasing more and more. Health is decreasing more and more. All right, because Esau, through his pseudoscience and his technology, not only is it wearing down the saints, us Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, but he's basically wearing everybody out, and that's why everybody's so sick, depressed, dying, okay, addicted to all these chemicals that Esau is putting in the foods and in the water and the air, all right, the things that we need to put inside of our bodies, it's just causing everything to die and be corrupted. All right. So as I said again, 1 Corinthians 50, verse 50 in the NLT, it says, "What I am saying, dear brothers and sisters, is that our physical bodies cannot inherit the kingdom of Yahweh. These dying bodies cannot inherit what will last forever." You see that? These physical bodies that we're in, cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven, because our bodies are, filled with all types of chemicals and things that Esau's putting in the food to corrupt our bodies. It's filled with, stuff like this that we're reading up right here in this article. All right, this smart dust that we're breathing in on a daily basis. Okay, chemtrails that we're breathing in, forever chemicals that's put in the waters. All right, and as well, our bodies are also defiled with all these plastics that we consume. And because when you think about it, a lot of the stuff, whether it be food items, snacks, okay, drinks that we buy out of the store, a lot of these things are all packed in plastic in some way, shape, or form. Whether it be plastic bags, seal wrap, plastic containers, plastic bottles, so these bodies that we're in are filled with plastic as well, and that's another aspect of how, the things that we put in our bodies is constantly wearing us down, defiling us, killing us, all right? And this is all just the more reason why, these bodies cannot inherit the kingdom of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, the kingdom of heaven, because these bodies are too corrupt, so therefore we're going to need, as the Apostle Paul further goes down into in this chapter, that's why we as Israelites, we're going to need the new bodies to enter into the kingdom of heaven, because these bodies are played out, because these bodies are too destroyed, primarily thanks to Esau Edom, and so I'll just get one more and end it off. Let's see. This is Psalm chapter 7, verse 9. It says, "Oh, let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just, for the righteous power trieth the hearts and reins." Let's read that in the NLT. Psalm 7, verse 9 in the NLT. "In the evil of those who are wicked," stuff like this, what Esau Edom is doing in the earth in these latter days, just constantly destroying the earth, destroying the air, destroying the food, the water, okay, destroying the human body. This stuff, although we know Esau has to do these things to ultimately fulfill prophecy, okay, to show the world that he's the wicked, he's the man of sin that the Bible speaks of, all right, but ultimately, when it's all said and done, all this madness and wickedness and evil that Esau is doing to earth, this stuff needs to come to an end, okay, very, very soon. And that's why Yahweh Shema Shai is shortening up these days for the elect's sake. Okay, or else what? If Esau Edom was to continue, to be able to do all these things, all right, no flesh would be saved. Esau would destroy everything and destroy everybody. So that's why the Lord is shortening up the days. Okay, ultimately for the elect's sake, so that we won't perish within Esau's wickedness. Okay, so Psalms 7 verse 9 again in the NLT: in the evil of those who are wicked and defend the righteous, for you look deep within the mind and heart, O righteous power, Yahweh Shemashai. Hey, so that's pretty much it. So Lord willing, this video is edifying, and until next time, shalom.